Thanks guys for coming today. I'm very excited for today's presenters, Cody Bell and Leslie Nilsson. They were actually going to present to us for the symposium here in Utah, but unfortunately, as we all know, that didn't happen, or it happened online. So we're excited to have them with us. Before we get into that, make sure to stay after. We're doing a drawing for another one of Dan Winter's books that's signed. And so Jay will be taking care of that afterwards. So a little bit, I'm not going to read Cody and Leslie's bios. I'm just going to talk about my little bit of experience with them. So first thing, so they're photographers for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, worldwide church, and they do amazing work. I was introduced to them while I was still a student at Utah Valley University. Just long story short, kind of helping out on shoots. Actually, as a model, I had a modeling career. That's how it all got started. and uh, and so, first of all, about Cody. Cody takes the most amazing pictures of his family. If I were to ever order somebody else's family photos, it would be Cody. Like I would love a book of the photos that Cody takes of his family. So you should definitely go check him out. And then about Leslie, I would not be here in this position if it wasn't for Leslie. He took a chance on me when I was, still a student, and after I graduated, gave me some opportunities to photograph for them a little bit, and it gave me some great experience to be able to get to where I'm at now. It gave me experience to be able to get the job when I was at UVU and then here at BYU. So I'm super grateful for them. I have learned a ton from them, just watching them, listening to them talk, being on shoots with them. They are unbelievable, and they've been able to do some amazing things in this worldwide church that I think has been beautiful. So we're excited to hear a little bit about what they've been doing there and their process of doing it. And so we'll turn the time over to them. So Cody and Leslie.
Thanks, Nate. I'm Leslie.
I'm Cody.
And that's Cody. I know that you guys all work for a large organization. We have a lot in common that way, and that, we're small people in like a very big pond, small fish in a very big pond with a lot going on. And it's difficult to kind of navigate through that. And it certainly has been for us. We should tell you a little bit about what we do as photographers, because it seems like it's kind of an odd thing to be a photographer for a church. But as you can imagine, a church like a university has a lot of publications. There's a lot of people involved internally, as well as for church membership all over the world. So we get a broad experience like yourselves in photography, in that sometimes we're shooting architecture, sometimes we're shooting products. And, when a good day, we get to go and photograph people, which is probably our favorite thing to do. Well, what was some of the other stuff?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I actually really like about our jobs is, I think, as a commercial photographer, you get kind of like nailed for being one type of photographer as much as you'd like to be something else. But we have the unique responsibility of shooting just a lot of different things. So our clients call us to shoot anything from portraits to sheets of paper to anything odd or random. So we get a lot of experience. But like Leslie said, our kind of passion is photographing people. And what I'm going to do is start sharing my screen. And I'm going to get this slideshow going. So just while we're talking, you can kind of see some of the work that we do, some things that we like to do. But just a little bit of a background. I went to Utah State University as a photographer. And I think my expectation of photography was that it was kind of real events and a photographer, more like photojournalism than it was fine art or advertising photography. So when I started working as a photographer, as an assistant and seeing how people would set things up, I was a little disappointed. But I think that I spent, the first couple of years of my employment in the photography world kind of just trying to learn what other people were doing. And so, following suit, using lights to set up things or stage them. But I kind of felt like always that wasn't really what I liked and what I did. And I think Leslie kind of came from a similar background. We were more trying to tell the truth, be more honest, and more of a photojournalistic approach to things. So it was kind of a blessing, really, that we had both kind of landed here around a similar time and had similar values in photography, because we are certainly like the odd people out in the group to be shooting or having the values the way that we did. I think our experience was way different, and it was just enough for each of us to kind of have enough courage to kind of change how things were done around here. I mean, at least for ourselves. So I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but.
Yeah, as a student, I studied at the University of Utah, and I remember during a kind of portrait session of that, where we learned to take portraits, the common wisdom of the time was make your people feel really comfortable and spend some time with them, and all these legendary stories of photographers spending a week in some far off tribe of people to where they would be comfortable with them before they'd pull a camera out. And to me, I thought, but what a lie that is. You're taking a picture. Everybody knows you're taking a picture because they're seeing the photo. So why try and hide that? And so Cody and I had very similar values photographically that way. And the same way when I started here at the church, not by any person's fault, but I just think in business and organizations like that, the common aesthetic was if you wanted to communicate an image, that you would stage that and set that up, which is just kind of a lie, because what you're trying to fake something. And both of us felt like, why don't you just photograph the real thing? I think the difficulty was in that pictures came as requests. Working for a church here, we work in a department called Publishing Services, which provides, media for other departments that require it. Missionary department, temple department, on and on, just like universities have different departments. And so a request comes in for a photo, and people would go out and just kind of construct that. So they have a whole catalog of all these fake photos. I think a part of our job, it being a worldwide organization, sends us to, far off corners of the world. And I don't know if it was a turning point, but Cody and I were in Mongolia, and we had an assignment to take 24 pictures, and all of these were really kind of staged and set up and drawn out for us, these pictures that we had to illustrate, that were going in brochures. And before we went, we almost kind of secretly made this pact that we would photograph real things also, that as we were in people's homes and visiting with people, we'll photograph what it really looks like, in the hope that we can make those pictures available, and that designers and people who, would access images would really like those. And I can't say that was exactly a turning point, but that was certainly a conversation that we had and something that we did. And when we came back with we got our 24 photos that were fake and staged and stupid, but sorry, yeah.
We'll be honest.
But we also had some real things, I think that the MO beforehand was, all right, now we're taking pictures, so everyone's ready and take pictures. But the way Cody and I would do it is as soon as you get out of the car, as soon as you show up, your camera's out and everything is fair game. Whatever's happening is kind of real stuff. And we would photograph that because it's real and it's honest. And I think you can see that.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of things that were kind of important for me starting to work here and kind of find my voice and my opinion on things. One of them that was, as we would hire models, and a lot of times it wasn't hire models, it was more volunteers that would come in and model for us. I recognized that they were terrible. They just weren't good at it. and it always seemed really set up and staged and fake because it was uncomfortable. And so like I had a, a time where I'm just really thinking about this a lot, and I recognized like they're not good at being models, but they are good at being themselves. And so if I can get them to do their own thing, then I'm going to capture photographs of what that looks like, which is good. So that was one turning point for me. The other was I lived downtown Salt Lake for a little while, and there was a photographer named Don Busaith, who is a portrait photographer, and he was my neighbor, and we would visit often about photography, and he would share photos with me and talk photography a lot. He's passed away recently, but one of his main thoughts was take one for Don. He would be hired by people to take photographs all the time, portraits, and they thought that they knew what they wanted, but he always had something for himself. And so he'd say, I want to take one for Don. So I'm going to go shoot what they want to shoot, but then I'm also going to shoot one for myself. And he said, most of the time they'll end up picking the photograph that I envisioned or that I took for them. And it's just that they didn't know any different. So I've kind of tried to use that as well on these assignments that were very prescribed. I'd spend some time afterward getting a photo that I wanted. And that was usually, and actually one of the things that works really well for me is to say, okay, yeah, I'm done taking pictures. And then everybody just kind of takes a big, deep breath and relaxes and goes back to regular life. And then I just start shooting that. And sometimes that's what it takes to get them to relax and be themselves. But we just figured we have this big trove of we're actually shooting this project right now of missionaries for our church. And in the past they'd hired models and got wardrobe and makeup and casting and all of that involved and shot it in the studio. But when the assignment came to us recently, we just said, look, we have lots of missionaries all over the world. Why don't we just go out and find them? And it's just a phone call to schedule a visit with them. So we're photographing real missionaries in the clothes that they would wear each day, proselyting, and we're getting the real thing. And it's much less time, much less expense, and it's actually more powerful, more useful images because they're just being themselves, and that's what they were trying to accomplish in the first place.
Hey, Cody, Leslie, we have a question just about model release questions. What's your process with that?
Go ahead.
So we do need to get model releases for an image that we publish, unless it's like a news event we're publishing about that. So we have a paper release that sometimes we will bring around and people can write their information on that. We also have an iPad release. I usually use the iPad release because they like to be able to see who it is that has signed. With the iPad, you can take a picture and get the information, have them sign that. So it's a pain, but it's part of it. It's just kind of what we have to do.
Yeah, one of the things that's actually been really helpful with the iPad release is that it has like this, and it's actually developed in-house, so it's kind of this barely functioning piece of software. But one of the things that it actually does well is it captures a photograph of the person with their contact information and their signature. So it's kind of like the paper release is really difficult to track down who unless you have an incredible memory, who's who. But for us, one thing that's been really important is as we go out and visit with people and spend time with them, they tell us about themselves, they share experiences, and their story becomes really what's inspiring about the photographs. So anyway, to have the ability to trace back to that person, to put their name and caption the photograph, or to tell their story. Here's one the Les wants to share about.
That was a great segue there into storytelling. I know you're all storytellers, and Cody and I have found ourselves more as storytellers than maybe what we originally intended, in that as we would travel around and you meet people, people are very interesting. You find out about them. And I just pause on this one because you see the picture and it's an interesting older woman holding a young child. But the story is, this is in Cambodia, and the baby's mother, who was 36 years old, had recently passed away. And so this woman, who's not a blood relative, but a nearby neighbor, and available and strong, she's 74 years old. She adopted that child. So that's her baby now. But it's things like that you run into constantly that I think are, when you're trying to, you can play it again, when you're trying to like tell the truth, and just be honest, you cannot imagine how amazing people and people's stories are. I think that's something that Cody and I had really realized. When you have a designer or a creative director who's trying to come up with a message or a story, they're not nearly as good as what real life really is. And so we would just kind of try and keep our eyes open and photograph and run into things, and the stories expose themselves, and they're amazing.
So I'll talk just a little bit of how this kind of like changed the culture of photography at the church, because you know, like I said, it was very staged photography and fake for a long time, which it was I think fine, it was okay, but Leslie and I really liked this type of photography, something that was real, and not only real, but had a story and something that was inspiring to it. There was a while that they had designers at our church had asked to get like personal, authentic, inspirational, joyful images. That was kind of like what they had hoped to do, and they thought they could accomplish that by like faking the shoots. But we realized it took like a different method to do it. So it took quite a while to like gain the trust of the designers on like the method of taking the photographs that way. I mean, they had the vision of what they wanted, but they didn't know how to accomplish it. So they would still send an assignment that says, I want a family that's dressed this certain way on a couch that looks just like this, and it's lit this certain way, and they're looking these specific directions and stuff. So we would still get requests like that all the time. And what happened is we started to do more like a stock assignment, essentially, where we were given a lot of freedom, where essentially we bought a plane ticket and went somewhere by ourselves without an art director, and we would photograph just real life and come back with the database of images, and then they could just find those and use them. And it was like, oh, that was the photo that I wanted. But so they started to trust us to do those kinds of things rather than prescribe all of the photographs. And I think it was a long process to do that, but we kept getting requests. And there were even times where I would get photos that were from like iStock, and they would say, can you take this exact photo, but just with
Oh, yeah.
RP lines? It's like, well, this is plagiarism, and I kind of can't do that. So let's do something different. So I would shoot something for them, and then I would shoot something for me. And like over time, we gained trust with the designers to where now essentially all they want us to do is go out and shoot stock imagery, and which really serves them because they get the authentic images that they're looking for. And when they're in the database, they don't have to request the photos, and the amount of time that it takes to get a project spun up for us to shoot it, process the photos, get it through our IP office and approved to use. They can look through a database and find the images, and you know, within minutes it's available and authorized to use, and they can just move forward and get the approvals they need and send it to the print center.
Cody and Leslie. Yep. So you guys have talked about your work with the designers and the different clients that you've had. And I don't know if you were going to talk about this too, but talk about, there was questions about the administration and how you kind of were able to get them bought into the idea, you know, for those higher up. Can you guys talk about that a little bit and what that process was more like?
That's a great question. You know, how do you affect change? How do you make that happen? And for us, I think you know, Cody talking about the designers is really key, because they're the ones who are putting together projects. And we found designers to be very like-minded, and that they wanted rich images that were believable, that didn't look staged. And so what we found is money or budget is tied to products. So if it's a brochure, a publication, you know, whatever it is, there's funding to be able to accomplish, to make that happen. And then if a creative director or designer, you know, specifies we want a picture that says this or that, then that's kind of a direct road into getting that picture. The problem is you're getting something that's fake because you're having to stage it. The change and where it's kind of derailed a little bit, and it did take a bit of faith and people trusting us, was that instead of taking one photo that has a very short lifespan because it's used for that one product and then it's done, like Cody mentioned, we would try and shoot stock. So if it's a family picture, instead of, you know, trying to hire families, stage a set, we would go and visit a few families and photograph real events. And instead of coming back with one or two photos, we come back with hundreds of photos, and all of them are honest. and all of them are authentic. And so we found that, like Cody mentioned, when the request comes out for a photo, very often we have it already. Because if you can spend a day or a few days in those kind of situations, and I think universities are probably similar to a church in that the images that we publish are very often specific things, relationships between families, the culture or what it's like to go to church. What does Christian life look like? And it doesn't look like, something that you imagine in your head. It's so varied all over the world that it's richer than you can ever imagine. But I think that when administration, when managers and things started to see products that were really well received, that they were on board immediately.
I'll tell you one thing that I did. I looked at one of the projects that we had shot. I was in Brazil. Leslie was in Bolivia, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at our photographs that had been used. So I took the total cost of the project and how many times they'd been used over about a 2 or 3 year period of time. And it came out to be that our photos were about $22 a photograph, which is ridiculously cheap compared to just a one-off photo shoot. So to be able to show numbers to our administration like that, they were like, okay, yeah, we can do that. One of the other things that I thought that's been important to us is we have a lot of different departments of our church, and a lot of them have actually a lot of crossover, a lot of similar interests, like from family history department, missionary department, our magazines and social media. And so when somebody is interested in photographs, when we think like, oh, these guys would also be interested in the photographs too. So we call them and say, hey, somebody wants us to take some pictures in Thailand. Would you be interested in photos too? And what it does is everybody can get together and pitch in a little bit of money, and then they all can get what they want. So that's actually enabled us a lot to be able to do this work, is to be able to find like-minded clients within our organization and serve them and allow them to pitch in to contribute together. So it's actually been really, really helpful and really, really good for what we do. Because before it was somebody would say, I want photos in Thailand, but we only got $3,000. And it's kind of like, that doesn't work. It's not enough money even to get there. So.
Hey, we have a few more questions.
Yeah.
So let's go through this one first. And you guys pretty much touched on this, but if there's any other ideas that you have, it's from Josh Hawkins. He says, how do you keep the communication working so you can find out what the designers need, where the holes are, so you can shoot what they need before they're asking for a setup shoot? How are you staying ahead, proactive instead of reactive? You guys touched on that a little bit about, you're already out there and you're just shooting a ton. Is there anything else that you would add to that?
That's a great question. And I don't think there's a fast answer to it, but it's when people start designing, instead of trying to be illustrative, meaning if it's, I don't need a picture of somebody using this book or manual, but illustrating principles of it, then it frees up designers a lot. Where I think design used to be that way, if it's taught, say it's an instruction about, how to, maybe help on how do you get your family together, and I don't know, any kind of specific thing. Instead of trying to illustrate something so specifically, it's more principle-based imagery,
relationships,
and yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and one of the other things that we do is just kind of try to think ahead. And as we talk to these designers that we have relationships with, it's kind of like, give us a wish list. What are the types of things that you're interested in? And I think after developing a relationship with them, we kind of already know. Mm-hmm. We just like in the back of our mind know exactly what kinds of photos people need. And that's often the case where, like, I'll be shooting for a different client and I'll photograph, I'll see something come up, like there was an example when I was in Madagascar, this guy that was driving me around, he had worked on some projects where they've done like wells, like clean water wells for different villages. And I said, take me to those. I want to photograph that, because we have a department, Self-Reliant Services, that would be really interested in those photographs. So he hadn't paid any money, didn't ask me for anything. But I sent him an email with some photos and said, hey, these might be useful for you. And he's like, hey, yeah, that's awesome. And they've used the photos a lot. So kind of being aware of who your clients are, what they might want, but also just asking for a wish list of things. You could plan for like next year and say, hey, you're going to need photos next year. What are kind of things that you would like to have? And we just try to keep that in our back pocket all the time and put those on shoots. And when we're shooting, to just be aware of things, situations that might be useful for them.
I remember I had a editor one time came up to me and so sincerely said, Leslie, we need pictures of fathers being fathers, just fathering. We don't get to illustrate that nearly enough. And then that's always in the back of my mind. So when you're out there, you see it and you photograph it, and it works that way.
Well, and I'll also mention that we're never going to be 100% capturing what people need just by shooting this way. We still get, one-off requests all the time, but we're going to cover 80 or 90% of the requests by shooting stock, I feel like. And then the ones that do come in, we try to approach it in the same kind of way of like, say, for example, it's some type of meeting or event that a family might have. And it's like, hey, tell me when you guys would do this. And I just like to come be part of it rather than show up and kind of tell the family where to do it and how to light it and what to wear and how to look. We try to stay out of that as much as possible and just let them be themselves. And we're just an observer and documenting it. So hopefully the images have a similar feel, even if they are coming from, a very specific request versus a stock assignment.
Hey, Cody, that touches on another question that was had. Can you guys talk about your process when you show up somewhere like to somebody's house?
Yeah.
And kind of what that looks like, because they're expecting you to take pictures, but you don't want them to pose for you. So would you mind talking through that kind of process? Yeah.
We have talked about that, and we have, stressed over that for a long time because, everyone's going to do it a little bit differently, but we have found a few things that work for us. Inevitably, if you show up somewhere and you have a camera, the first thing that people are going to say is, what do you want me to do? Because they are ready for you to instruct them, tell them where to go, what to do. And so our answer, and we will try and let the people know beforehand that we really just want to photograph their regular life. We don't want them to dress up for us. We don't want them to clean the house, to put on a show for us. We just want to photograph what really is happening. And you'd be surprised, people, if you don't instruct them and tell them where to go and what to do, that they will get on with their life and they will let you photograph them.
It might be helpful for you to know too that, because as much of a journalist as I'd like to be and spend like a week with the family, we've got to be realistic and make it worth their budget. So we're typically trying to visit at least 2 or 3, sometimes even 4 families in a day. So we're spending about 2 to 3 hours with each of them. And so the hope is that they can like get quickly the idea that we don't want them to pose. And there's times that it doesn't really happen all that well. You'll learn like lots of different techniques that will help you, but sometimes when it's tough, I'll just say, well, what would you be doing if I weren't here? And they'll say, okay, well, let's do that. And sometimes the question is, I remember photographing in South Africa, this young couple, and they were kind of like, I felt like getting anxious, like, all right, yeah, we got to go. Can we be done? And I was like, well, what do you got to do? And they're like, oh, we got to go visit this lady that is in our ward that is sick right now. And I was like, well, that's what I want to photograph. Can I come with you? So I felt like there's a lot of people that will put on hold their life for your photography event, when what you really want is them to carry on with their life. And, we've had times where we show up at people's homes at 6 a.m, walking around with mom, waking kids up, and they're like rubbing their eyes and, they're braiding hair and having breakfast together. We ride in the car with them to go to school and drop them off, or even on the train with a woman or man headed to work. So as much as you can, I like this story from Leslie. He went to, I think it was Armenia, and it was like really early in the morning. This man came to pick him up, and it was like 6:30 or 7, and they're right into their house. And Les was like, what does your wife think about us coming this early? And he said, well, we'll find out when we get there, won't we? And it was a person that understood what Les had told him on the phone, which is, I just want to shoot real life. And he knew if he told his wife, she'd clean the whole house and everything would be perfect. But what we want is just real life. And so there's a lot of techniques. And like I said, don't be frustrated if people don't get it because it's all the time where it's just a struggle to like get people to relax and forget that you're there.
I think part of our style of shooting is we go out slim.
Yeah.
And that, we have a small camera bag, and Cody and I have the same kind of desire for lenses, in that for the most part, we'll go out with full frame camera with a 24, a 35, and a 50. And
95% is taken with the 24 millimeter.
The 24 is definitely the favorite for both of us, because with the pictures that we're taking, we want people to feel like they're participating, like they're involved in the event. And as you know, wherever you put the camera, that's where your viewer is going to be placed in the scene. And I think it looks good. It feels like people are involved if they're close.
One of the things that I think both of us felt strongly about is some of these old school techniques that were kind of keeping the style the same was really just around, I mean, these were, equipment or ideas of shooting that were really revolved around the technology we had in cameras, which was slow sensitivity film. You had to have a tripod, or you're using lights and gels to try and match color temperature and stuff. But I mean, the technology's changed so much. Like, we threw the tripod out the window like 8 years ago. It's like ISOs are awesome. We're shooting with fast lenses. Natural light looks great. And even when it's really, really dark, one of the things we do a lot is just turn off the lights in people's homes and let the light come through the window, and you get great direction. The color temperature is so much better. And so, we've just tried to use techniques and technology that help lend to what we want to do, rather than hang on to the tripod and the lights that were really like, what we wanted is natural look and comfortable people. But when you have a light set up, they're only limited to like a 2-foot area that they could move without it, being too bright or too dark. So
on our way to Mongolia, on that shoot I was telling you about, one of the senior photographers who I very much respect, and he's been kind of a mentor for me, but Cody and I were taking off, and he had done similar assignments in far off places of the world also. I remember he grabbed us both and he said, "Leslie, I want to encourage you. I want to counsel you as strongly as I can. Please take a tripod." And it was like, no. We told him no, because that will guarantee that we don't get anything that is honest and authentic, because the time people can't freely move around, and all of a sudden photography becomes the event, and we just do not want the event that we're photographing to be photography, the photo shoot. It's their life, and we are just going to kind of be visitors or guests there and photograph that, not direct it.
Nate, did you have another question?
Yeah, I got a couple other questions. Some of these I'll try to tie together and edit the questions for ones you've already kind of answered. One is, how do you find great stories and people? Like, where do you start? And that's kind of tied with, let's see, how do you make the relationships or the connections with the people when you go places? Do they all come from local church groups? And do you guys work together or alone? There's a couple questions there. Do you use a translator when you travel places?
So this is like one of my favorite parts about what we do. And I think Leslie and I both really strongly feel this, that everybody has a story. And I know there's a lot of writers in our organization that would go out and they would pre-screen all of these people and find out their stories. And then they'll only visit select people. Les and I are like, we don't discriminate. We don't even usually know who we're going to photograph. And we find that there's just really rich stories from almost every person. And we love that we're not trying to like tell a specific story before we go. It's just like this surprise kind of thing that we come up with. And it's because we just hang out with the people and visit with them, and the people just share about themselves. They'll have a picture on the wall you ask them a question about, or they'll just start to tell you about themselves, and just to be aware of it. And we'll pull out just like a cell phone or a little recorder and record their story. And they're always just so rich, so inspiring.
If you're interested in people themselves, and you will be, people will share. Once, I think it helps that you're photographing them and they realize that you don't want to take your picture of them. You want to take their picture. You're not trying to direct it. You want to photograph their real life. They'll realize, they know that you really are, you care about them, and you want to show what their life really looks like. And they will share. Some of you may have seen the I'm a Mormon movie.
Yeah,
we hate that. Because it turned into this really extraordinary people. And in any organization in the world, there's going to be some people that accomplish extraordinary things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't know if that's really representative of a whole group. And to me, it's the very simple stories that I find touching. People are amazing, and everybody in some way is amazing.
These are the photos I was telling you about earlier, going to visit this sick lady. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead. I think that's it's all of that. So finding stories is just listening. Cody and I, it used to be, we would work oftentimes. Initially, I think we worked on assignments together more often, but we don't do that so often anymore. We'll work at the same time in different places oftentimes, and we share a lot as we're working. And we would, have FaceTime calls or something in evenings after working. Cody's in, Madagascar, and I'm in Ukraine or something, and just sharing the amazing experiences that we had. And at some point, we decided we got to record these and talk to writers, and so a lot of those stories are being published now. But I think that honestly, if I'm going to give a direction or hope for how we use media, that we would reference those people and identify them and share more about them, because I think they're inspiring.
One of the things that I think is important for me is that, like I said, when Les and I are working on these projects, a lot of times they're at the same time. Sometimes we'll travel to an area together, but work separately throughout the day. So like dinner time, and a lot of times we'll work past dinner, but it's like 9 o'clock dinner, and we're talking about what happened during the day. Or if we're in different locations, it's almost a daily phone call to each other of like, send some photos, talk about what happened. It's usually just like, dude, you got to hear like this family that I met. They were so rad. And we're just telling each other these stories every day. And I think that it's really helpful to have somebody that you can share these ideas with and motivate you or inspire you to do something else. And I think that's something that's important for me, is like learning whose opinion really matters. And I don't mean to be rude or anything, but a lot of times the designers that we work for, I don't really care about their opinion. I know that they're our client, and I have to provide images that they like, but I'm not going to value my self-worth as a photographer based on that. If I provide something to them that's great, that they love, it's not going to make my ego go really big if I don't really love the photo. So I'm trying to like get to the bottom of like, what do I really like? And that was a question I asked Les once when I think we were on the streets of Mongolia. He was talking about photography, and I was like, dude, have you shot anything working for the church that you actually like? And for both of us, the answer was no, we don't. Like, and we, I think, felt good about ourselves because we were providing imagery for the clients they really liked. And I think that question was really good, because it's like, I don't think those are great photos, and I need to find not only my own voice and my own style, but I need to find people that I respect their opinion. So I have a friend that lives in New York, and I'm sending him photos and asking opinions, and it's like, I'm not going to base my self-worth or the value of the photography that I'm doing based on, maybe a designer I'm working for, and I don't really like the shots or their vision, but I'm going to base it on somebody that I really respect and the style of work that they do. So I think that's important, to find somebody that you can really relate with. And that's why it's been great to have Les work here with me, is that we have a very similar vision and style. And so I can send photos to him, and his opinion matters to me, but other people's maybe don't. But I don't mean that in a bad way. I just hope that it's like, I'm providing something for our clients that they and I like, because at the end of the day, I want the viewer to see something and also like it and be inspired by it.
I think that's important. Cody and I will share a lot of pictures, and sometimes, he'll like a picture, and I tell him, I don't care for that one or something. He's like, I don't care. I like it anyway, And I think that's important. If I don't like a picture that Cody likes, he's not offended. It doesn't bruise his ego. he's confident about the pictures that he's taken and what it is that he likes about them. I feel like I'm the same way. If Cody doesn't like a picture that I've taken, it doesn't matter. What does frustrate us, and I should say, it's not all like roses and highways, because our pictures, our best ones, still never get used.
Yeah, like all of these photos you're seeing, most of them have never been used in any of our publications ever. I mean, probably 98% of these have not been used. But I put together a little portfolio of images that I like, and Les does the same thing. And it's like they might not be useful for the designers that are picking them out right now, but they're important to me, and I'm trying to develop myself as a photographer and to become better. And I don't know if I should say this, but my comment is always like, I'm not going to hell for them not using the photos, but I like these ones.
So we working for the church a few years back, they took on a project. The church took on a project because it's a large organization, and to try and unify the look of our publications. So they took on what they call a global visual style guide, and we were lucky enough to be asked to participate. And I think that they had a lot of faith in us and a lot of trust, because they consulted with us a lot, and I think that has been helpful. And now that it's done, and it's regularly being updated, and it kind of describes more than just fonts and colors and design and how official church publications should look, but also about the style of photography. And that project went on for maybe 18 months or something.
Yeah, just so you can see, this is the style guide, and it's very photo heavy.
And the idea was a change, in photography. I shouldn't say the idea, but there was a change from kind of staged photographs that are illustrative, that are obviously kind of fake, or obvious to any photographer, kind of fake, into photos that are authentic, photos that are real, photos that tell the truth. And they kind of illustrated, not just in photography, but 8 different attributes they call key attributes of photography and design, and how the church should be presented. And we'll run through some of these pictures that were selected as being representative of being welcoming, being empathetic, being global. You can read these things.
And one of the things that I think is really interesting, and it's kind of cool to see how much impact you can have, because Les and I just felt these were values. And like I say, a lot of these photos haven't been used, and that's one thing. But I'm trying to get better and quantify what I think is a good photograph and what I like and what. Anyway, as we put these photos together, it's gotten attention not only from designers but others, and it influenced directly in a large way what these attributes are. And so what I hope is that moving forward, that this is all written down now, and it helps designers kind of recognize what we're already seeing and thinking with our photography. So that's been really helpful to be influential in the putting together the style guide of images, is that it hopefully ensures that images that we think are good and important will continue to be used.
The nice thing is, it's not just Cody and I who are taking pictures. There are photographers and people who are contributing from all over the world. And this is an internal document, but that people can see if they're contracted to take pictures, or if they're a photographer in some place, they can look at that and get an idea. You as photographers could look at these and have an idea of the style of shooting that you should use to contribute to publications for this organization. I hope that in your organizations they put together a similar thing, because it can certainly helps, as well as it's unifying. It makes the whole all of your products look a lot more unified, and there's maybe a cohesive message that will come across.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in real quick. A couple of questions. One, I haven't searched yet, so I'm not sure. Is this style guide available online for people to look at? There's been a few requests to see.
Only for church employees.
Yeah, I think they're sensitive about that just being released to the public, unfortunately.
Okay, good to know. And then question about, there's quite a few. I will start with this one. Just a question with, what does your post-processing look like? What's your process there?
Well, it's as fast as it can possibly be. I mean, I'd love to spend more time on the photos, but essentially we use photo mechanic to cull through the photographs in a quick as fashion as possible. So I find that a 12-hour day worth of shooting is, about a day worth of post work for me. Maybe half that day or a little more than that day is just editing through my photos. And I don't want to spend any time adjusting a photograph that I'm not actually going to use. So I really spend the time editing through photo mechanic to narrow down my selects. And then I think we both have a similar process. Then, we make like a selects folder and we use Capture One to like essentially do brightness adjustments, contrast and color correction. And that's about it. Usually not even any cropping or anything. It's just straight out of camera.
We have to do formal portraits and things a lot. And there we'll end up in Photoshop and change things around. But for the most part, the style of shooting that you've seen illustrated here in the photos is Capture One, edited by Photo Mechanic. To give you an idea, Cody was embarrassed because yesterday we were shooting and Cody yesterday shot 14,000 pictures.
Yeah, that's a joke. So sorry, you had to hear that.
But you edited it down to what? 200
photos. Yeah.
So basically we're the crappiest photographers in the world.
Yeah. You look at our percentage of success photos there, it's pretty low.
I shot, I don't know how many thousands yesterday, the same thing, but a lot.
Yeah. So I got a new camera that shoots fast. So I'll just use that as my excuse.
Here's another.
We got it pretty hard.
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
You're good.
So here's another question. I'm just going to read it. It's a long comment and question. It says, this reminds me of David Duchemin's approach to framing, shooting what moves you, shooting authentic moments where each element within the frame interacts and adds to the overall story. Besides the human interest, clearly faith is an important factor in how you frame your projects. Can you share a few words on that? And maybe the framework process of sharing your worldwide view with a new member of your team or someone who has a different approach. Learning to see the story within the story isn't always easy.
Boy, that's a really insightful comment. I don't know if I have an intelligent answer for it. I was going to shoot an event several years back one time, and I have a neighbor who is a newspaper photographer, and he was very talented for a long time. And so I went to him and kind of asked him the story, what should be my angle on this when I shoot this? And he looked at me like, you idiot, it hasn't happened yet. How can you tell the story that hasn't happened? Of course, the media today is different, but we try and let it expose itself to us when we're there. And I think his comment about faith is a really telling one, in that I think we look for inspiration. We prayerfully approach these assignments, and our hope is that our eyes, will be able to view the things that are critical, that are important, that could be inspirational. And we're sincere about that. We're really sincere about that. And that's I would say a really important part of our approach, in that we have faith in God that He will assist us in our work, because we believe we are working in His kingdom to try and support, illustrate good values of honesty and family and love and kindness. And Cody and I look for similar things in pictures, but the thing that I look for, the thing that I want to photograph is relationships. And it can be relationships between people, relationships of a person with their environment. But it doesn't matter where you are, who it is. Humans are good at recognizing how we feel about each other by the way we interact, by the way we react to each other. I always comment that I want to do extraordinary pictures of just everyday events of not extraordinary events, I suppose. Cody maybe has more comments.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that, faith is obviously like a huge motivator for us. And I think that for any organization you work for, you have to like recognize what's core importance to the organization you're working for. And for us, we're religious people anyway, but we happen to work for our church, and we try to like have this blend of what we believe in our church and like apply that to our photography. And I feel like that's a huge benefit for us. And, there's times, and I would almost never admit this to any of the people we work for, but there's times we've traveled halfway across the world with absolutely nothing arranged to shoot. We've tried our best. We've done whatever we could do. And we just say a prayer that things will work out, and they do. I think that's what I like. That's why we try not to like be too, we want to prepare enough, but we don't want to overdo it to where our hand or our fingerprints in it too much, to where we want to like be led to the areas we should be and to the stories that we should find. And that's why I don't want to know too much about the people. I don't want to select like, young, attractive, wealthy individuals to photograph. I want a good variety of like young and old and different shapes and sizes. So I feel like we're led and guided to like the places we should be. And some of that's just like a random thing, but we're just using faith to move forward. But one of the things I wanted to comment is like, I feel strongly that one of the things you'd mentioned is that like the context and the relationship between the people in the photographs and their environment and the way that it's shot and framed is a really important thing. The unfortunate part is that we have designers that don't really recognize that or agree. They've got boxes already like set up for the article before they even commission the photography or before they see what we have. So most of the time our photographs get cropped and used in a way that like, I don't even recognize the photograph. They'll be like, Les, did you shoot this? And he's like, no, I think that's yours. And it's like, it's really sad. Like I want to put that little border on it, like Henry Cartier-Bresson, and say, you can't use my photo unless I can see this black border, because everything in the photo is important. Like it's not just their face. We have this comment, we don't want to use people and photographs as wallpaper. And they need to be like, the people and their environment and everything around them should be important to the photograph and telling their story. And I think if we can do that, caption the photos and tell their story, it's powerful photography to be using. But that's not for me to decide right now. It's somebody else's choice.
I think it's fun taking pictures. I mean, we work for a religious organization. Most of the people that we're photographing are church members in different parts of the world, and so there's kind of an inside route to be able to get into people's homes, any place of the world, which is a rich and wonderful place to be. But I think there's kind of a perception in the world that religious people are kind of kooky, kind of conservative, and kind of weird. But that's kind of that's my life's work, is to photograph these people, where the reality of it, when you get it, you meet people, is actually they're really kind of cool. And this stereotype of these weird looking polygamists, running around Salt Lake City, that's just not really true. And that's not really true anywhere in the world. These are cool people that you kind of want your kids to play with. They're fun. That's what my observation, at least.
I want to just answer this Alyssa's question about this, like speaking to give credit where credit's due and for self-aggrandizement. One thing that's really interesting about our photography is like it never is credited ever. And if the only time that it would be credited is if it's on the cover of a magazine, and usually they get it wrong. So like a lot of times I'll get credit for photos that Les has shot, or
the ones that I like, Cody
yeah.
gets his name on.
So one of the things that's interesting and that I love is, I have a career here at the church. I've invested that, but like ultimately, like they own all my photography, and I couldn't take it with me and use it anywhere else. So at the end of the day, it's like, these aren't my photos, and I try not to get too worked up about. I've been here long enough, about 10, 11 years, to know that it doesn't really matter if somebody crops my photo terribly. It bugs me, but I can't do anything about it. And if something is great and is used a lot, and almost nobody knows that it's me. We're like the least famous people in the world, probably. So,
yeah, we will go to people, designers and people publishing stuff sometimes, and make comments and share with them, maybe too directly, that we wish they would show a little more space or use it like this, or maybe make some recommendations. And that's something that we have found people really like, is if we make some recommendations. I think we're around imagery so much, and you're editing so many photos, you get good at recognizing the strong ones. We don't have a photo editor here in the publication. There's not like a professional editor. But you have designers with varying degrees of skill and ability to recognize a strong image. And so if you can give them, what we've often done, a few selects, they appreciate that. That's helped out.
I'm going to go with one more question just about equipment. If you guys have been starting to use mirrorless more with silent shutter, and if so, how has that affected your work?
I'll let Cody talk about that because he's in love right now.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's actually been a big deal. I feel like for a couple of reasons, but the silent shutter is like the biggest reason. I got that Canon R5 recently, and I love the ability, not only with the mechanical shutter that it's quiet, really quiet, but for electronic to go totally quiet. I'm able to shoot photos in a way that people don't really know that I'm taking photos. So that's number one. I think that's a huge leap for me in being able to take more candid photos. But the other thing is the focus. Like I've been telling Les that, this camera is so awesome because it'll track faces, and like 99% of my photos are in focus. It's been a huge deal. And I've always had the 1DX. I just got the 1DX Mark III. And I feel a little bit sorry because that camera's been used so much, but I feel like I'm like turning my back on an old friend because I just leave it in the bag, because my mirrorless, just the focus is just so much better. So I use the R5 for almost everything now.
I have a D6. We're kind of spoiled for gear. I hate to even admit that, but if we can make a good justification, and we use the heck out of the equipment that we have, but we have good equipment for sure. I put an order in for I use Nikon. So and I'm not married to it. I'd be happy to use Canon or whatever else also. A new Z7. We'll see how that is. Of course I haven't seen the Z7 II yet. I've used the Z6 and the Z7. I thought the Z7 was kind of slow. The 2 is a little faster. Hopefully it'll be okay. We do have regular events that will photograph, they're religious events. So the idea of a camera is not going to fly. So a quiet camera is a big deal.
Yeah, that, and then when we go, a lot of times with the video crew, sometimes we'll be sent kind of with a video crew, so to be able to shoot quietly and not interrupt them. Just the other day, I had a news photographer that was with us, and he made some shutter noise, and I just kind of looked at him and smiled because I had mentioned that to him before, that I was using that because it was quiet, and he got in trouble for using his loud 1DX shutter.
We're so spoiled. Just as a world now. It wasn't that long ago, people were out there using a flash, having to shoot on tripods, and now you can just throw your ISO wherever you want and shoot in almost any situation that you want and get away with it. Except I see Derek here as a question, banding issues with the R5. Personally, so Cody and I on an event recently, he shot the R5. I shot, what was I shooting? Was it Z6? I was shooting the Z6, and the R5 banded much less than the Z. I hope the 2 series are better than that. Banding is a huge problem. I hate it, especially with LED lights now. Down here in Salt Lake, there's a conference center, a big kind of auditorium. And for years it was lit with just great tungsten light. You'd go and shoot in there and you could count on it, 3200K and 0, and your color was going to be perfect. Now it is whacked with LED lights. I'm sure they're energy saving, blah, 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 but they're terrible to photograph with. So I don't have the answer for that.
That's the reason I like that the R5's mechanical shutter is really quiet, because you can get away with that mechanical shutter almost in any situation. But when you do have to go electronic, if you can slow down your shutter to about an 80th of a second, you just won't get that problem at all. Anything slower than an 80th, and because it has in-body stabilization, it's not really a huge issue unless you have somebody like the subject you're shooting is moving a lot. So I just kind of hold my breath and shoot it, and it usually turns out really pretty good at around an 80th or slower. We're getting close on time, right? Yeah. Any other questions?
Yep. Yeah. Any last questions before we wrap up? While we're waiting for any response there, thank you, Leslie and Cody, seriously so much. It was awesome presentation, a lot of takeaways there that we can go back to our individual universities and see what we can do. Love the stories, the images, the kind of focusing on, what there's a lot of stuff that's out of our control, but what's in our control, and the power in seeing that, and how it's been able to change it's been able to make an entire culture shift. So thank you guys so much.
Feel free to reach out to us if you have any. I mean, Nate's maybe your contact, but if you got questions or want to, it's just nice to like have a network of people to lean on. So if you need anything, feel free to reach out anytime.
Awesome, appreciate it. Any last words from you guys before we turn the time over to Jay?
We're good.
I think we're good. Thank you for having us. It's great. I like this kind of group that you guys have, and you can share from each other. If you know any other groups of church photographers, let us know. We'd like to hook up with them.
You guys are welcome with us anytime.
Well, thank you.
Anytime.
I'll see you guys. Thanks.
All right. So Jay, go ahead and turn the time over to you for the book.
We're not going to have a closing prayer.
Well, as somebody who grew up in the LDS culture, it was interesting to watch the transition from, this late 70s staged photography to some real authentic imagery. So I appreciate, as a member of the church, I appreciate what you guys have done.
Thank you.
So this is, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. The book from Dan Winters, the last launch, we're going to give it away by trivia question. I believe it was Cody early on mentioned a photographer that he had mentored him and had taught him about how he would go into a shoot and shoot for his client. The question is, give me the first and last name of the photographer, or give me the quote that the photographer would always say. All right, looks like Serge already jumped in there with both the first name and take one for Don. I love that principle. So the book's yours, Serge. All right, thanks again, Cody and Leslie.
Yeah, thanks everybody for jumping on today, and look forward to seeing you guys again. Have a good Thanksgiving and Christmas time coming up.
Yeah, thanks.